officially entered our global bankruptcy era for clean drinking water.
For much of the world, normal is gone.
That's right. Welcome to the Western water crisis. And buckle up, because the water infrastructure in the southwestern United States is on the brink of an absolute catastrophe.
Cities are telling residents to cut their water usage. Farmers are abandoning their crops, and local officials are asking how much water is left.
El Nino has officially arrived. Just look how dry the soil is. It's likely to bring worldwide impacts. Floods in South America, to droughts of wildfires in Australia, as well as chaos of weather in other countries.
These AI data sets that are now popping up all across the country.
I have a jar right here. This is the current drinking water. I can't live in my home with no water. I don't cry anymore. I'm just exhausted from it.
We have to fight the data center. This is not beneficial to anybody.
We have passed a tipping point. We cannot go back.
Ends at end of times.
Well, it is. The reality is, the science says we've come to that point.
So running out of fresh water wasn't exactly on my 2026 bingo card, but it's increasingly becoming a reality. For decades, scientists, policymakers, and the media have warned about a looming global water crisis. However, those warnings usually referred to a temporary water shock followed up by recovery. What's different now is that all across the world, we're seeing a slow draining of water systems that have historically sustained us, meaning that this isn't just a speculative threat, but something that's actively real time. We see this in how since the early 1900s,
that's why she's staring at your ass like that.
Large lakes have shrunk, and now nearly 75% of countries are classified as water insecure or critically water insecure. So what exactly makes 2026 different? Well, to start, this year is forecasted to likely be the hottest year on record, when we're already dealing with droughts internationally. At the same time, the tech industry is moving forward with data center infrastructure at breakneck speeds, depleting water levels on a local level as well. And listen, if you still don't believe me, the fact that where I live, affectionately called Vancouver, is worried about water should be telling you something. So that's what we're going to dive into today, pun intended, how we're living on borrowed time and borrowed water, and where all the water has gone. Okay, water crisis. Let's get into it. First things first, we need to quickly go through how the water system actually works, because I've been hearing a lot of misinformation going around about where our water even comes from, believe it or not. So, to take it back to sophomore year and dust off the old water cycle diagram, I am pulling up the first Google image that came up.
The perfect introduction to our investigation of water.
Okay, so seen here we have evaporation from the ocean, which condensates into clouds above my head. Over here, condensates to clouds, moves over to precipitation, onto the mountaintops before flowing back through rivers into the ocean. Got it? Good, because there will be a quiz at the end. Now, this is obviously the simplest Microsoft Paint-esque version of the water cycle, but the point being that water on Earth is a closed system. It neither leaves nor magically appears.
Are you suggesting that water never, ever stops moving? Ever?
Making it seem like water supply should be a non-issue, except again, as you remember from school, we only get 1% of the total water on Earth as fresh water. Okay, easy part over. Here's the thing. While every drop of water will continue to circulate around the Earth until the end of time, its presence in the waterways and reservoirs we need to survive isn't as guaranteed, which is why I'm here talking to you today, because our fresh water is actually a finite resource that is actively being depleted. And that's how we got to the point of no longer being in a global water crisis, rather a water bankruptcy.
Today, the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health is releasing our flagship report, Global Water Bankruptcy: Living Beyond Our Hydrological Means in the Post-Crisis Era. Emerging in many places, what we see is a persistent failure state where water systems can no longer realistically return to their historical baseline.
As said earlier, close to 75% of the world's population lives in countries classified as water insecure or critically water insecure. And overall water demand is projected to increase by some 55% by 2050. So how were we able to ruin this harmonious water system to the point of global catastrophe? I really want to know. Good question. Let's get into the main culprits to give us a baseline surface level look at where all the water has gone.
Why does the rum go?
Starting with where most of our drinking water comes from, dams.
Whoever built this did a damn good job. Look how magnificent it looks. It looks so good.
We have another diagram when we pull it up. So seen here, we have our beautiful mountains that fill up our reservoir. The water then gets treated and distributed out to our homes. And right here, maybe right here, is what makes it all work, a dam. Taking advantage of the waterways that would run off into the ocean if not interrupted and stored.
But one of the biggest mysteries of life that I haven't been able to solve, and I've solved most of it. How did the water stay up this high before the dam was built? Like, how do they build a dam up against the water? I just don't get it.
Great. Except dams don't mean anything unless you have water to fill them. And that's getting harder to do these days. One reason for this is because we've increased industrial water demands and energy production, putting strain on the system, which I will get more into later in the video. But the other big issue is that rising global temperatures are depleting our water reservoirs on multiple fronts. That being, higher temperatures are increasing evaporation rates to the point where water lost through evaporation is sometimes higher than the total amount of water consumed in certain regions. But also, a warmer than normal winter means less snowfall on our mountains, reducing the natural storage relied on to get cities through the summer months. And this is exactly what we're currently experiencing in Vancouver, where low snowpack is part of the reason we're already in stage 3 water restrictions, before we've even hit summer.
We're very lucky with the system we have, but the system has its limitations. And when the reservoirs are full, they're full and they need to last us throughout the summer. By the 2050s, the average winter snowpack is expected to decrease by almost 60%. By the 2080s, that number is closer to 80%. We're already losing winter snow as the season shifts, getting more of our snow as rain.
But we're not the only ones dealing with shrinking reservoirs. It's happening all over the world. To name a few, the Colorado River's 2 largest reservoirs, Lake Powell and Lake Mead, have fallen from roughly 90% capacity in 2000 to around 30% today.
Lake Mead is only 146 feet away from dead pool level. And if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking, damn, that seems bad. But realistically, when is that going to happen? They predict that Lake Mead could reach dead pool status as early as 2026.
The UK, the reservoirs England does have are at their lowest levels in at least a decade, just 67% full on average. As well, in 2022, China experienced its worst droughts in decades, causing reservoir levels to fall dramatically, forcing power shortages due to reduced hydroelectric generation. ResearchGate summarized here, surface waters are shrinking. Those are our checkings accounts that get renewed every year, that nature is kind enough and generous enough to deposit some budget, give us some income. It's normal to go to the savings account and buy resilience for the dry years, but what we're seeing around the world is that the savings accounts are also draining. We are exhausting them. So what are these savings accounts? Well, that would be groundwater. Another diagram.
Here we go again.
So we have on the top here an unconfined aquifer, which sits under a permeable material, meaning that it can get recharged and depleted as rainfall fills it up and droughts drain it. One perk of unconfined aquifers is that they can actually help sustain rivers by feeding them through the hot seasons. So much so that in some areas, most of the river flow during the dry months is groundwater. A confined aquifer, on the other hand, lower level wherever it is often referred to as fossil water because it contains old water that hasn't moved since it found its resting place under non-permeable materials. This, of course, means that if it's pumped up and depleted, there's no going back. There's no refilling, which now should make sense of why groundwater is considered a savings account because there's no auto deposits refilling it.
These rocks contain ancient water that has been trapped inside them for millions of years.
Open it and drink it. You will die. However, how many people get to die like that?
The problem is that many countries have already stretched their surface water supplies to their limit and have little choice but to tap into the groundwater resources to keep the water flowing from the tap.
And home is your gym, family hub, and office? Your Wi-Fi can't stall out. Enter G-Fiber's Wi-Fi 7. Wi-Fi that flows faster and smarter with network traffic rules that work for you. G-Fiber Wi-Fi 7, the best Wi-Fi ever.
What's up, guys? It is singer and songwriter Hana Tanhasi, and today I'm going to show you how I got my music on Spotify in under 5 minutes. I used to think uploading your music onto streaming platforms was this huge, complicated process. It's actually a really simple process. DistroKid makes it easy to get your music out on Spotify. All you got to do is go in there, upload your track, add the title, add the release date, and then bam, it gets uploaded, distributed, and that's what I love. It frees me up to focus on the creative side of things, like writing, recording, shooting videos, and rehearsing for my shows. In today's world, the power is in the artist's hands. If you want to be an artist and share your story and your talent with the world, why not? It's easier now than ever with DistroKid.
As said in the book, The Last Drop, we're extracting all groundwater at rates so much faster than any natural recharge. So much so that the natural recharge rate almost doesn't matter. So where is all this groundwater going? Well, primarily, and by a long shot, to agriculture. In fact, within the 1% of all fresh water available to us, 70% of that goes to agriculture. As for groundwater usage, more than 2 billion people and 40% of global agricultural production relies on unsustainable levels of groundwater extraction. Now, while there are plenty of issues with agriculture's water use, from growing water-hungry crops in drought-prone regions to use it or lose it water allocation policies that discourage conservation, and the enormous amount of farmland dedicated to feeding cattle that has faced considerable criticism.
All of you cows standing around, and nobody had the forethought to tell me that the water tank is leaking? Notify me of these things. We have a process.
Despite all that, we can't dam the whole system because we need to eat, right? And this is a recurring theme in this video, that water use isn't inherently the problem, rather where we source our water and what we use it on. But back to aquifers, we are unfortunately doing irreparable damage to cities as a result of overdrawing groundwater. The overexploitation of groundwater was causing cities to subside around the world. In Iran, sinking by 30 centimeters a year, in the US by about 28 centimeters a year, and Mexico City by about 21 centimeters a year. On top of that, as mentioned, groundwater supports our river systems, and by overexploiting them, we're depriving rivers from inflow during critical times of the year when those waterways will dry up without them. It's just a hot mess of a self-destructing cycle where we're spending our annual renewable water input from rivers and snowpack, all the while depleting our finite resources in aquifers and other natural reservoirs. Meaning that if we keep this up, nearly every nation is destined to reach what is called day zero, where a city's water supply gets so depleted that they turn off the taps. If our water systems were a bank account, then we are all so far into our overdraft that the bank is at the point of collapse. Speaking of waste, one part of my childhood that was arguably the biggest waste of time was going to Greek school. Not because learning the language of my family was a waste of time. The structure of the school just wasn't helpful for teaching us how to actually use the language, besides memorizing some nouns and verbs. So even though I went every Saturday for years, nothing stuck. And that's something that's just always bothered me, that I missed out on a deeper layer of connection to my family and culture. But what I really needed back then was a way to learn that was intuitive and practical to real-life conversations. And that's where today's partner comes in, Rosetta Stone Sapphire. Rosetta Stone's new program, Rosetta Stone Sapphire, has all the same features that have helped millions of people learn languages for over 30 years, while introducing even more advanced and personalized ways to learn. The reason Rosetta Stone Sapphire is so effective is because they focus on the conversational aspect of language learning, instead of getting bogged down in grammar exercises that aren't very helpful for real-world communication. With their dynamic immersion method, you learn intuitively with images and words in your language, and so your brain makes connections between them, just like how children learn language. You're learning how to naturally understand and communicate in everyday situations. Another really cool feature is their true accent technology, which compares your speech to millions of native speakers and gives you instant feedback on your pronunciation. It helps train both your ears and your voice at the same time, so you're not just recognizing the language knowledge when you hear it, you're becoming more comfortable speaking it yourself. Rosetta Stone Sapphire also goes beyond the mobile experience. On desktop, you get access to even more features like interactive chat missions and even over 500 topic-based flashcard sets, all things that make studying feel more engaging and personalized to your own interests and goals. These are the kind of tools that I needed as a kid in Greek school, but at least I have access to them now so I can make up for lost time. So if you would like to take advantage of the 25 languages available, whether it's to connect with loved ones or travel around the world, you can get access to all new Rosetta Stone Sapphire for as little as $15, only with the exclusive link in my bio or with the on-screen QR code. Okay, before moving over, I need to take a moment and say that there are so many issues affecting our water systems that it's impossible to cover every single one of them in a 30-minute video. Like, I can make a whole video on the water waste in the fashion industry alone, but I won't be covering it all. Just know that we're using a lot of water in really bad ways, and if I left out a water challenge that's important to you, feel free to share it. I would love to hear about it.
I have some questions about the show I just saw on water. I just want to know who you think you're kidding. You're kidding.
But for the rest of this video, I want to focus on more novel and pressing issues that have been added to the list of challenges. So on that note, how could the water crisis get any worse? Well, in this chapter, we're going to discuss El Nino. I don't know about you, but I've been seeing El Nino all over my feed over the past month, and as it turns out, it is very applicable to our discussion today. So, El Nino, yet another thing that you probably learned about in high school, that honestly, I really don't know much about because I didn't pay attention to any weather section in school. Why? Because I don't really care for weather or meteorology. No offense to anyone who loves it, I'm just not interested in it. Despite being someone who loves the sciences, I just didn't care about the weather. Either way, I do remember the mention of El Nino and its sister in Christ, La Nina. To bring on another diagram, as seen here, El Nino and La Nina are opposite phases of a natural climate cycle in the Pacific Ocean. During El Nino, on the top here, the water in the Pacific becomes warmer than normal, at least 0.5 degrees warmer than the average, because the trade winds weaken. Don't ask me what a trade wind is. But this allows warm water to spread eastward. This shifts water patterns around the world and often leads to higher global temperatures, droughts in places like Australia and Southeast Asia, and mild winters in Western Canada. La Nina is the opposite. Stronger trade winds push even more warm water toward Asia, allowing colder water, at least 0.5 degrees colder than average, to rise near South America. And if you zoned out, basically El Nino is the warm phase of the cycle and La Nina is the cold phase. That is all I remembered from high school anyway. Now, to give you the current update on our weather systems, we are transitioning out of weak La Nina conditions, and the Pacific is currently in a neutral state. This may have changed since I'm filming this, but that's what I have as of right now. But as we can see in all these recent thumbnails, El Nino is on the horizon. And it's not all clickbait, as there is an 80% chance of it forming before September and a 90% chance before November. Apparently, scientists are warning that this could be the strongest El Nino of the century, leading to the classification of Super El Nino. How nice. A little scarier now, isn't it? As said here, according to the latest National Weather Service forecast, forecast issued in May, the odds of a super El Nino occurring between November 2026 and January 2027 have risen from 25% to 37%, meaning that the U.S. and the world as a whole might be in for some wild weather later this year. And a super El Nino could make 2026 or 2027 the hottest year on record.
My goodness, Alex, I honestly can't believe it's going to get as hot as you're about to tell us it's going
to get.
Yeah,
so we're talking about headline temperatures of around 38, 39 degrees Celsius.
Would that be a record?
That would be record-breaking.
So what does that mean for us? Well, the last time we had a super El Nino was not that long ago. In fact, it was 2023, which was, as mentioned, one of the 5 strongest on record and broke global temperature records by 2024. As for local repercussions, it resulted in one of the worst wildfire seasons in Canada, burning over 5 million hectares, including the devastation of the resort town of Jasper in Alberta, which was nearly completely burnt down by a lightning-ignited wildfire, which was accelerated by the dry conditions and the extreme winds.
This is one of more than 900 wildfires that are burning in Canada right now, but this one, it is particularly hard, as Jasper was considered the jewel of the national park system here. A Canadian colleague told me it's the equivalent of Yosemite or Yellowstone, and Alberta's premier fought back tears while promising to rebuild even stronger than before.
And how does this apply to our water crisis? Well, it definitely doesn't help, because what happens in an El Nino is that temperatures rise, of course, causing droughts, but also results in increased rainfall events, which might sound good because we're running short on water, but what this actually means is floods, which are, for one, catastrophic for communities, but also don't do much for our water supplies. This is because the floodwater comes and goes quicker than we can do anything with it. For groundwater to be replenished, the water has to actually soak into the ground, which just isn't the soil we're dealing with, as nearly all agricultural land has been degraded to the point where the soil has no ability to absorb anything and retain water.
I'm standing out here in a paddock of canola that's looking just fine, even though it's just been hit by a very large hailstorm, but it's going to recover just fine. But here's a good example to demonstrate a situation that part of Australia has. Unwettable soil. They're very old, sandy soils around here. And we can get a situation where, even though it's all wet on top and squishy, and there's puddles lying around, if you take a bit of a dig, you can find there's a dry layer.
They say higher education is outdated, irrelevant, but at Grand Canyon University, we shatter the status quo. GCU's bachelor's, master's, and doctoral education degree programs combine coursework with observational education.
GCU gives you hands-on experience so you can learn to lead your classroom with heart, faith, and purpose.
Dry and dusty underneath.
Years of non-regenerative farming has stripped away organic matter and damaged soil ecosystems, causing more rainfall to run off the surface, then infiltrate into the ground and recharge the aquifers. And even more so when the droughts have dried up the soil to the point of being hydrophobic anyway. So what happens with all that runoff then? Well, if water reservoirs don't have the capacity to hold it all, then it just gets redirected into the ocean. Again, locally, we had this happen just a few years ago where atmospheric rivers came up flooding through our valley to the point where our drainage systems were overwhelmed and couldn't get rid of the water fast enough. Not that we needed the reserves at that time of year, but it was still devastating, especially when atmospheric rivers were never a part of our vocabulary here in the Greater Vancouver area, literally until they came and destroyed the valley. And now we expect them every year.
I know that there's a lot going on in the world right now that is very important, but this deserves your attention. March 2026 was the most anomalously hot month ever recorded. That doesn't mean it was the hottest month ever recorded, but it means that it was the most out of step with normal month we've ever seen in the 132 years that we've been measuring the temperature. But the consequences of climate change are not just the world getting hotter. Weather gets more extreme, and flooding is becoming more common in more places. Just recently, there has been flooding in Afghanistan, in Angola, in Russia, in Dagestan, and nearly 200 people have lost their lives in these various floods.
Sorry, this video is depressing. It's just the reality. But back to the point, these rainfall events just don't make up for the water demand throughout the year. So that's one concern with El Nino. The other being the warm winters it brings. As mentioned earlier, many northern regions rely on mountain snowpack to sustain their water supply through the summer, which is all but written off in El Nino cycles as winters are too mild to build up sufficient snow accumulation on the mountaintops.
It is the last day of the year in 2023, December 31st, and I'm standing in front of the local pond here in Waterloo region where ordinarily in most winters people would be out skating on it right now. Now, obviously, there's no danger of anybody skating here anytime soon because we're experiencing something that's known as an El Nino winter.
Said here in 2024, for example, Ottawa only got 60% of its usual amount of snowfall. Temperatures were more than 4 degrees warmer than normal. They had no days below negative 20 degrees Celsius. The average is 16 days, and they had no skating on the Rideau Canal due to the warm weather. The reason I bring this up is not because this is the one El Nino to destroy us all.
No.
But rather a reflection of the broader trends we're beginning to see in our water supply. Because as the global temperature continues to rise, the strength of these weather events will only escalate, wreaking havoc on our once reliable water systems. Because over time, there's a high likelihood that the rising ocean temperatures may increase the devastation of these El Nino and La Nina events, though scientists are still uncertain about how exactly it will affect their frequency, duration, and intensity. But as we know from the UN, since 2000, flood-related disasters have risen by 134% compared with the 2 previous decades, and the number and duration of droughts also increased by 29% over the same period. As for warmer winters, we here in Vancouver are far from alone in experiencing the blurring of lines between seasons. Scientists project that by the end of the century, California could lose a substantial portion of its average Sierra snowpack.
We did not get a single snowflake, and they did acknowledge it, in the city in Iceland in January. This hasn't happened since 1940.
This place used to have glaciers. So the original source of the Amazon was basically a whole bunch of glaciers, running on this face of Mount Misley. And of course now, with climate change, these glaciers are gone.
Dr. Hans Sanderson says that even Denmark's winters are no longer recognizable. We've lost a whole season to climate change. I find it hard to comprehend. I visited Denmark in winter and it involved ski jackets and snow boots. We only have 3 seasons now, fall, summer, and spring. It's the same in southern Sweden. The Swedish Met Office have officially said that all of southern Sweden do not have winter any longer. It doesn't fulfill the criteria. As of 2022, the last 3 winters, there's been 0 skiing or skating, no snow, and no ice. And so what's happening here is not that there's 1 or 2 freak weather events, but a fundamental rewriting of water cycles at local, regional, and global levels. One that is wreaking havoc on the infrastructure that we've long relied on to deliver water to our taps.
What in the fuck is going on?
Okay, I've made you wait long enough. It's time to finally talk about La Piece de Resistance data centers. So, to start, if you've been living under a rock, the world is currently racing to build data centers at an unprecedented rate.
How many data centers do you think are currently proposed or under construction in Michigan? Take a second. Think about it. If you said at least 21, you might be right.
And everyone is talking about it, right? Specifically for their water usage, which is very sound criticism because, as we know, water is already so scarce. So why would we want to be throwing even more water away just for Grok to undress images of women on X? More than 160 new AI data centers have sprung up across the U.S. in the last 3 years in places with high competition for scarce water resources. According to a Bloomberg News analysis of data from World Resources Institute, that's a 70% increase from the prior 3-year period.
What do you mean? I'm incredibly happy that Utah just got approved for
That's
large
making us think, oh God, it's
despite the fact that we're in a drought, despite the fact that it's next to Great Salt Lake, which has arsenic in its bed, which is currently drying up, which, if it dries up, arsenic will be released into the air and potentially all intolerable.
Now, as for how much water data centers use, we don't exactly know that number because AI companies aren't disclosing the information, and it depends so much on the infrastructure they're using, which we will get into. But to get to the bottom of this, we need to understand how data centers work and why they even use fresh water.
I can't wrap my head around why AI data centers require fresh water. Why not wastewater or recycled water or salt water? but fresh, drinkable water.
First of all, if you don't know, data centers need cooling in the building because the systems produce a lot of heat and they need to maintain optimal temperatures to prevent damaging the chips. Another diagram.
I hope we're not back in the water cycle.
Here specifically, we have an evaporative cooling system of a data center, which has brought the most concern around water usage. Data center equipment generates heat. That heat is then transferred from circulating coolant to a circulating water loop, which then carries the water to the cooling tower outside. So inside the tower, warm water is sprayed over a large surface area while fans pull air through the structure. A small portion of the water evaporates, and as it does, it carries heat away with it out the top, right? The drift. Now, these water towers require a steady stream of water, usually fresh water or municipal water, because they're continuously evaporating and losing water in the process. This is the loop of concern where water vapor leaves out the top and is responsible for data centers consuming 60% of the water they withdraw.
Yeah, listen. We fucked up.
Now, the biggest understanding I've seen online is from people saying that the water used in data centers isn't a problem because the water isn't destroyed. It just re-enters the natural water cycle.
What goes around comes around. A veritable merry-go-round of moisture.
Which is true, and yeah, wouldn't be an issue if it weren't for the fact that, again, we have a global water bankruptcy on our hands. Like, sure, if we had an oversupply of fresh water, then yeah, there's no problem here. And more often than not, we're talking about data centers being built in water-scarce communities, like in Arizona, Texas, and India, leaving the residents with taps that run dry in the aftermath of construction. Because this isn't just little amounts of water being lost to the atmosphere. We're talking about massive volumes, all evaporating away. Globally, the report estimates that data centers consume about 560 billion liters of water annually, and that could rise to about 1,200 billion liters by 2030, as tech firms push for bigger facilities stocked with more advanced AI computing chips that run hot. And this is where we see all of those videos online of people turning on their taps and essentially nothing coming out because the water system is overdrawn by data centers.
Just be aware the next time you go to fill up your water bottle at your tap in your home, that water could be being used for AI instead of to feed your greedy fat body. So just think of that.
Amazon offers hourly employees health care for $5 a week with $5 copays.
Thank you.
Should I go home?
No. Don't tell your mother anything. That is selfish prick.
When Beverly Morris retired in 2016, she thought she had found her dream home, a peaceful stretch of rural Georgia surrounded by trees and quiet. Today, it's anything but. Just 400 yards from her front porch in Mansfield, Georgia, sits a large, windowless building filled with servers, cables, and blinking lights. It's a data center, one of many popping up across small-town America and around the globe to power everything from online banking to artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT.
I can't live in my home with half of my home functioning and no water, and I can't drink the water. Beverly believes the construction is to blame, but Meta denies this. No one should have to be afraid to drink the water. Not in this day, not in this age.
So, evaporation is one of the water concerns, but the other is the wastewater. And how is there wastewater, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. So, no matter what water source these data centers are drawing from, there will be contaminants to deal with. Even in municipal water, there are dissolved solids like calcium or magnesium. And as we evaporate the water, these minerals get left behind and build up over time. That is where the blowdown comes into play. To prevent contaminants from building up, the cooling system periodically flushes out a portion of the water as wastewater, known as the blowdown effluent. This wastewater can become especially concentrated when data centers are drawing from rivers, lakes, or groundwater sources, as those water supplies already contain quite a bit of dissolved materials and other contaminants.
This is the water we drink. It's pretty disgusting. Yeah, it's full of dirt. I can't believe we drink this stuff.
Now, it's important to note we all produce wastewater, right? And that, in and of itself,